Good afternoon. My name is Yvonne and I am from ShanePubblications. And today I am going to show you how to create a poem. Now, I have never taught poetry, but I have been writing it for over 30 years. So that should qualify me to teach you how to write a poem. Now, the first thing you want to do once you have decided that you are going to be a poet is keep a pen and paper nearby at all times. The reason being is because when a thought or emotion comes to your head that wants to be turned into a poem, you must write it down. If you do not write it down, and by the time you settle down from whatever it is you're doing, it will have left the building. So if you don't have a pen and paper, get your phone, type it into your phone. You have to get it out of your head, because if you leave it in your head, it's like little marbles just shooting around. And by the time you settle down, it will have left the building. So keep a pen and paper nearby. Get your little notebook. Make it exclusively your notebook for your poetry. Unfortunately, the first body of poems that I wrote was in the format of a book titled Do Tell Someone: Inner Turmoil Surrounding Sexually Abused Victims. Now, I did not just want to write about my own experiences. So what I did was I researched and I gathered and I studied other people's situations or rape experiences, and I wrote it in a poetic format. So the entire book of 149 pages is about my, as well as others' sexual abuse experiences, written in a unique, condensed format of the experience. So I will leave a link so that you can download the free ebook. Anyway, after I was able to get out all of that hurt, anger, pain, so forth and so on, I was able to then start writing about positive and more joyous events as far as poetry is concerned. So the first thing you want to do is get out that pen. I'm going to share with you a poem titled Must Hold On. And not only am I going to share with you how I came to write this poem, I'm going to share with you the inspiration that caused it. So it was inspired by my first teenage son. He thought I was mean and wanted to go to foster care. Now, when we are teenagers, we don't think about nothing except what we want to do, but we forget all about those years once we have teenagers that we must raise. And that's just the way of life. We forget all about what we did as a teenager until we're faced with the fact of having to raise a teenager, and then it all comes tumbling back to our mind. Anyway, when I got the call from the foster care agency that they had taken him from school, I cried and I prayed and I prayed and I cried. In the midst of all of those tears, I kept walking over a single page that had fallen out of my Bible. And finally, I picked it up. And it was 2 Corinthians 12:9. And it reads, "And he said unto me, My grace is sufficient for thee, For my strength is made perfect in weakness. Those words hit me like a ton of bricks. And immediately I was able to come up with the title of the poem, Must Hold On. In addition to having read 2 Corinthians 12:9, to the pain that I was going through, because I also did feel very weak. So the title came out first. That is how God spoke to me that day. So I wrote down must hold on. That was the title. Sometimes the title will come first, sometimes the body, introduction, and conclusion will come first. But in this case, the title was born. So I wrote down must hold on, and I was trying to wash dishes. And while I was attempting to finish the dishes, because the situation was pressing on my mind, the first stanza came out. I look at writing a poem as writing an essay. Go back to high school and remember your English teacher. Introduction, body, conclusion. So usually my poems have at least 3 stanzas, at least. Sometimes they may have more, but most of the time they have 3. So after I wrote Must Hold On and tried to wash the dishes, you must hold on to God when things start getting rough, came out. So I grabbed my pen and paper and wrote it down. So now I have, you must hold on to God when things start getting rough. Sometimes when you write, it all comes out at the same time, and sometimes it comes out in pieces. And that particular day, Must Hold On came out in pieces, and the rest came the following morning. So again, I tried to wash the dishes, but second part of that first stanza came out. So now we have, you must hold on to God when things start getting rough, because his grace alone is sufficient enough. Now there are a lot of different kind of poets, but I gravitated to the rhythm poet. So my motto is, second line, make it rhyme. Second line, make it rhyme. So as you can see, second line, it rhymes. So again, I tried to finish writing the dishes. I tried to finish washing them, rather. And just like that, the next couple of lines came out. His strength is made perfect at times when you are weak. And almost immediately, the next 2 lines came out. Tighten your grip on him when at your lowest peak. So now we have, you must hold on to God when things start getting rough, Because his grace alone is sufficient enough. His strength is made perfect at times when you are weak. Tighten your grip on him when at your lowest peak. So as you can see, I was able to take some of 2 Corinthians 12:9 and put it in my own form. I'm going to read it again. And he said unto me, my grace is sufficient for thee, for my strength is made perfect in weakness. And you could see that in the poem. You must hold on to God when things start getting rough, because his grace alone is sufficient enough. His strength is made perfect at times when you are weak. Tighten your grip on him when at your lowest peak. So after that, I was able to finish writing the poem, but I went to bed unsettled because I knew that I had not finished it, and I had to get it finished. Anyway, I go to bed early, so I wake up early. And once I woke up, the rest of the poem was on my brain. And so I quickly grabbed a pen and paper and wrote it down. I don't think I had a computer at that time, so I was definitely into the notepad and the pen. And it reads, it's during those weak times God will be right along with all his loving grace right there to keep you strong. So if you want to be a poet and you want to be a rhythmic poet, just remember, second line, make it rhyme. 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 Also, when I had the desire to become a poet, I did go to the library and I grabbed a book called How to Become a Poet. I also had checked out all of Maya Angelou's poetry books. And I didn't actually use her poetry books. I kind of read through them, but once I read How to Become a Poet, that book did it for me. Called the library a couple of days ago to see if that book was in fact still available, and the librarian could not find it. And neither could she find it in Google, and neither could I. So there are other similar books. But the book that did it for me was How to Become a Poet. I loved Maya Angelou's books. I didn't even know before high school that she had written anything other than I Know Why the Caged Birds Sing. I absolutely love all of her biographies, but I just couldn't really get into her poetry books. Anyway, we all know she was a great writer and a great poet, but How to Become a Poet is the book that did it for me. And what you want to do if you want to become a poet is you want to practice, practice, and practice. And you also want to get familiar with other poets' style, not so that you could copy it, but so that you can develop your own. And I'm telling you, after reading different people's poetry and their style, you will definitely develop your own style. Writing a poem is like writing an essay. Just remember, high school, essay, introduction, body, conclusion. Writing has always been therapeutic for me. And once I began to write poetry, then it just became, I just was able to write in a different style. Instead of just straight writing, I can make a poem out of anything. That's just how much practice I have had over the years. And I think that looking back, that having written Do Tell Someone, where I went in and took a person's story and rewrote it in a poetic format, has gotten me set up for, being I call myself a custom poet. I can take your story, no matter what it is, happy, sad, mad, glad, I can rewrite your story. If I have all of the details, I can write your story in a poetic format. And a poem that I write is usually based off of someone's experience, whether it's my own or somebody else's. It don't have to be my own experience for me to write about and write in a poetic format. I just need the details. My grandmother passed away. Actually, first my doctor passed away, Dr. Richard B. Lockett, and I was just so hurt because KDIA at the time said, "Oh, it's going to be just fine." Then they announced that he had passed. So Dr. Richard B. Lockett, his poem was the first one I created. I called them memorial poems. And after he passed away, after I wrote his poem, then my grandmother passed away a few years later, and I wrote a poem, custom poem for her as well. And the next two poems I wrote was for a mother who unfortunately passed in a fire in Richmond, and she would not leave out of that apartment until she went in there and got her baby, and unfortunately, they both perished. But when I wrote the custom poems for them, the poems outweighed that obituary. People were grabbing them like hotcakes. And just something I do. I can write a poem about anything, anytime, anywhere. I just need the details. Period. Anyway, after you have created your lovely poem, do not leave it blank. You want to make it beautiful. That will be my next lesson, how to beautify your poem. You do not want to leave it blank. No, you want to make it beautiful and share it with as many people as possible. Now, even though this poem was created in reference to some pain I was going through, it has been sold many times because a lot of people have been able to relate to it. Now, I was in Oakland one time, and I don't even remember what we were doing out there, but my son came back to the car and said that a man wanted him to buy something that he had created on paper. So I went on and purchased it, but it was some words. I can't even remember if it was a poem, but it was some words on some cute cardstock paper, and he was selling them for $3 or $4. So I got the idea, well, shoot, if he could do that, I can surely do it. So I actually at that time, or sometime thereafter, I had gotten my first computer. It was a bucket computer, but it was a computer all the same. So I put one of my poems on paper, and I don't like selling, so I gave it to my son and told him to go and sell it to one of the brothers of the church. And the brother said, "This is just a piece of paper. Go and do something with it to make it a product." So my son came back and told me what the brother said, and mine had to start wondering, how am I going to make this into a product? Hanging out at Kinko's early one morning, I saw lamination. And that is exactly what I did. I beautified the poem and I laminated it. So I took it, or had my son take it back to that same brother, and he said, "Well, yes, this is now a product." Gave him the $5. So when you perfect your poem, after you write it, go sit down, take your break, come back and edit it unless you have a professional editor. Remember again, your English teacher with that red pen of hers, marking all over what you thought was your perfect paper. And you want to edit it to perfection. And once you edit it, then you want to beautify it. Do not leave it plain. Beautify it and share it with your friends, your family, whoever. If you have kids, have them go sell it if they are, in fact, salespeople. Anyway, must hold on. You must hold on to God when things start getting rough, because His grace alone is sufficient enough. His strength is made perfect at times when you are weak. Tighten your grip on Him when at your lowest peak. It's during those weak times God will be right along with all His loving grace, right there to keep you strong. And I like to conclude, to God be all the glory. Not all of my poems are inspired by partially inspired by quotes or writings from the Bible, but some of them, in fact, are. Anyway, I also put 2 Corinthians 12:9 on this one. One time, we and my youngest son were in San Leandro at that big Safeway, and he attempted to sell. Well, actually, he did sell the poem to an older lady. She wasn't that old, but what happened was when she finished reading it, she started crying. I mean, boo-hooing all over. She could not contain herself. He thought he did something wrong. So after she finally gathered herself, she told him that that son of hers was putting her through it, and that these words are the words that she needed at that time. Anyway, she gave him the $5, and he was just stunned, came straight to the car and told me what had happened. Also, while we were in Oakland, East Oakland, one of the uh, beauty shops told my son, because I had a little red in this poem, she said, "Tell your mom not to put red in this poem ever again. Red is a party color, and this poem is much too serious." So I never put red in this poem again. Must listen to your customers. Anyway, that is how you write a poem. You come up with your introduction, your body, and your conclusion. You give it a title. And I haven't really put my name on a lot of the poems. I just put my publishing name, which is Shane Publications. Shane Publications. I have written some books, but for the most part, I just say to God be all the glory and leave it at that. But I do have my publishing name on it. Come up with a publishing name if you're going to go full throttle with this. Shane Publications is my publishing name. And like I said, to God be all the glory. He is the one who gives us gifts. I had two teachers that told me to go for writing, and I did not know what they were talking about. Went to college to be a fashion designer, and as soon as I completed, well, maybe a couple years after, completed fashion design school, I began writing. I said, "Oh, that's what they were talking about." Because my high school teacher, Mrs. Joan Cone, and my college professor, Mr. Bob Doerr from College of Alameda, they both told me go for writing, and I just didn't get it at the time. But writing has always been a therapeutic outlet for me. Anyway, thank you for stopping by. I hope that this information has been helpful. I will I'll have a link to the poem Must Hold On on inside of the link for how to create a portrait from my YouTube page, and you can download it. And I will also include a link for a free ebook called Do Tell Someone: Inner Turmoil Surrounding Sexually Abused Victims. Anyway, practice, 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 and I look forward to seeing your poetry out there. You can do it. Just remember to keep a pen and paper nearby at all times, and if you don't have that, write it in your phone. Thank you for stopping by. Have a blessed day. Go out and bless someone, and may God bless you.